welcome to Crime Bytes, the show where we talk about some truly bizarre and disturbing crime cases. My name is Eliza, and today is True Crime Tuesday. And I don't have my little sidekick with me this week, Detective Scoot Dog. We're packing for vacation, and I literally just dropped him off at the kennel, and I miss him so much already. So the summer is upon us, and we're kicking off our Sinful Summer series by talking about lust. I believe I mentioned last year how much I loved the movie Seven when I was growing up, or was kind of morbidly transfixed by it, to say the least. Anyone else? Plus Kevin Spacey, but from what I hear, he could be the subject of a whole episode of his own, which is unfortunate. I love him as an actor. But before we meet today's family, let's pause for a quick promotion and watch out for lust, because a lot of bad things can happen, and one of them is crabs. I have crabs, but I got them at the beach, not from someone's crotch. And I can't believe I just said that, but if you're a goofball like me who loves a good crab pun, or you like the beach aesthetic, I had one guy buy one for me a couple of weeks ago because his son was redoing his room to look like a science museum, which, how cool is that? I hope your room is amazing and you love your crab. I do sell a few different types of crab shells, but my most popular is the horseshoe crab, which are native to the beaches that I go to in Connecticut, and I spend a lot of time there during the summer. I'm going next week. So let me tell you a little fun fact about horseshoe crabs. Did you know that they are not technically crabs? They're more closely related to spiders and scorpions. Also, they have blue blood. We have hemoglobin, and that makes our blood red. They have hemocyanin, and that makes theirs blue. And it's very important blue blood, and it's used in our medical research. It tests for bacterial contamination in equipment and injectable medicines. So now you know, and you can grab one for your house or for a nature-loving friend at my Etsy store. The link will be right down in the description. And with that, let's get into today's case. And today we're going to be talking about adoption. There are many reasons why people may adopt, but the main two reasons boil down to either wanting to provide a child with a loving home or not being able to have children naturally, or a combination in most cases. But what about people or couples who don't have the children's best interest in their minds? I mean, why would you want to adopt a child if not to give them a safe and loving home? The main two reasons there would be either for labor or sex, and we're going down that second path today. Let's start by meeting the Zulocks. Zulocks, who cares? We have William, who is working in a local government customer service center, and Zachary, who was the branch coordinator at his local bank. The pair would meet in 2013, and they got married about 4 years later on December 14th of 2017. And they had both always wanted a family of their own, so they would start looking to adopt right after they tied the knot. Once you know it, an agency called All God's Children would have two little boys who needed a home. They were brothers, and at the time of their adoption, they were 5 and 3 years old. All God's Children would focus on children who had special needs and who were in the foster care system. These two boys had parents who were heavily using drugs, so they were up for adoption, and on paper, the Zulocks seemed like the perfect fit for these boys. The couple was very prominent in the LGBTQ community of Walton County, Georgia, and as a result, their sons would become sort of like poster children for this community with them, and they were even featured in Out magazine together. In 2020, the couple would build their dream home together. It was this huge place on a 2-acre plot of land on a cul-de-sac where houses went for almost $1 million, and it seemed like they literally had it all. But then in 2021, a seemingly unrelated arrest was made that would literally just bust the doors open on their little suburban paradise and reveal to the world what was behind closed doors, and that was anything but the happy little blended family that they created together in the face of adversity. It was a true house of horrors, to the point where it almost comes off like straight anti-LGBTQ propaganda, and I don't think they could have made up a better story either, because in August of 2021, an arrest was made on a 27-year-old named Hunter Clay Lawless for possession of explicit materials containing children. He was arrested based off of a tip, but when all was said and done, it was the material that was in his possession that would lead authorities back to the Zulocks. He would give them the name Zach Zulock, who he met from a guy named Blake that he met on Grindr, which is like a gay Tinder. So what I'm kind of curious about is, how do these people find each other? Like, it explains how, but I mean, how do we go from, okay, we're both on this sex app, how does it get to the children? I know people throw around things to test the waters, but Hunter would tell the detectives that they ended up on Snapchat together, where Zach was sending him snaps reading, "I'm going to F my son tonight," and later send snaps with actual explicit material. How does it get there to that point? Because that's how the Zulocks ended up being caught, for not only sexually abusing the boys that they adopted for years, but for sharing video evidence and even attempting to pimp the boys out to Hunter and another predator named Luis. So after Hunter spilled on the Zulocks, their home would be raided on July 27th of 2022. They would slam Zach to the ground and get him out, and they pulled William out of the house naked. And then the search warrant would be carried out, and the extent of what these poor boys were put through would be discovered. They would basically be abused sexually in every way possible on almost a daily basis. They would find a folder titled Us on Zachary's phone that was particularly disturbing, but when all was said and done, they would compile a folder with 149 explicit images, 2 flash drives from the Zulocks' phones, text messages from Hunter's phone, those Snapchat messages, 2 letters that were written by the 11-year-old boy, and then the physical exam results that were conducted on the boys after they were brought in. They would also collect clothing from the boys' room that matched the digital evidence that they had collected. There was also evidence that one of the boys was physically injured at one point from this sexual abuse. I'm not sure how exactly we know this, because nothing was done until Hunter went down. There was evidence that the abuse went back as far as 2019 as well. So for at least 3 years, these boys were forced to live in a literal nightmare. They would apparently tell the boys that their business was their business, and what happens in the home stays in the home. And if you don't already know, that's extremely coercive behavior in most cases. So the question becomes, how could this have been avoided? And unfortunately, there were some signs that everything wasn't perfect before this blew up. For starters, when it all went down, someone would report that they saw William slap the younger boy across the face, which obviously isn't okay. It is also reported that they were a little extreme with the boys, making them stand in a corner as a form of punishment, which, I mean, sounds good compared to what else they suffered, but by itself is also concerning. They would make them stand there for 8 hours with only snack and bathroom breaks. they couldn't move at all besides that. So yeah, just not okay in general anyways. On top of this, they should never even been able to adopt those boys in the first place. In 2011, Zachary was reported for luring a 14-year-old boy into a residence and then assaulting him sexually. The case was not properly investigated and no charges ended up being filed. And after this case blew up, it was reinvestigated, and officers that were working that case had since left the force, and they would end up concluding that it had not been properly investigated at that time. And if it had been, Zachary would not have been allowed to adopt the boys, which is why it's so important that these issues are handled properly, not just for the victims in question, but so that people like Zachary can't go on to keep hurting children. Anyhow, when they were brought in, they both started pointing fingers at one another like he did it first, which, really? William would claim that Zachary was a pedophile before they ever met, which sounds accurate from the 2011 incident, and Zachary would claim that it was William who began targeting the children first. William would end up admitting that he had forced his 11-year-old to perform an oral act, and Zachary would admit to sending explicit materials involving the children to multiple people, but he made sure to be clear that it was less than 12 people. Zachary would tell a relative that he was afraid for his life because his cellmate had threatened to beat him. He thinks his cellmate laced one of his drinks with prescriptions as well, and he would email his attorney and beg him to get him out of this mess with that information, and William too, if possible. He was also really nervous about all of his subscriptions that were racking up charges that they weren't able to use while they were locked up. Things like that. William was complaining about jail as well, mostly about the food. He was saying he couldn't drink the milk because he is lactose intolerant. He doesn't like the soy patties or the bologna sandwiches either and refuses to eat them. He says that they're not even good enough for dogs, which, sir, sir. I mean, in my mind, dogs are way better. I miss mine so much right now. Like, that's an insult to dogs. When everything was said and done, on August 20th of 2024, William would plead guilty to 6 counts of aggravated sodomy, 3 counts of aggravated child molestation, 2 counts of incest, and 2 counts of sexual exploitation of children. And on October 21st of 2024, Zachary would plead guilty to 2 counts of aggravated sodomy, 3 counts of aggravated child molestation, 2 counts of sodomy, 3 counts of sexual exploitation, and 2 counts of pandering for a person under 18. He would plead not guilty to 2 additional charges of incest, but a judge would find him guilty in a bench trial of these charges. Both men would be sentenced to 100 years in prison without the possibility of parole. If they do live past these sentences, they will be put on probation for the rest of their lives. The boys were put back into the foster care system, and the last update I could find was that they were searching for suitable new homes for them. As for the 2 men who attempted to purchase the boys, Hunter Lawless ended up pleading guilty to sexual exploitation of children and was sentenced to 20 years, with the first 12 being served in prison, and he had to cooperate fully in any prosecution of the Zulocks. The second was a 25-year-old man named Luis Vizcarro Sanchez, and he would plead guilty to pandering for a person under 18. He simultaneously pled guilty to a few computer theft counts and would receive a total of 60 years, with the first 15 to be served in prison. And he also had to cooperate fully in the Zulocks trial. And if that wasn't enough, shortly before they were arrested, Zachary would reach out to All God's Children Incorporated to see if they could adopt another child. they had shut down in the meantime, and he was specifically looking to adopt a young girl around 2 years old, which I don't even want to imagine why, but thankfully this was never allowed to be pursued. All right, guys, what do you think about this one? It certainly highlights why proper child placement is so important, because Zachary slipped right through the cracks in 2011, and they were able to appear on paper as great candidates for adoption. I have so many thoughts on this one. It's just so terrible, but maybe justice will be served and they can receive similar treatment in prison to the horror that they put those poor little boys through. I don't know if that's appropriate to wish, but I kind of do. And I don't know which sin will be in next week, but we've got 6 more to go through, and then summer's almost over. I don't know where it went already. I hate when that happens. But until next week, please stay safe out there. Bye.